everyone, Tristan Lombard, Director of Community at Provar, and today I'm sitting down with Zac Taylor, Solutions Engineer at Provar, as well as Michael Dailey, Solutions Architect, and today we are going to be talking about Provar's unbreakable, polymorphic, end-to-end intuitive tests, and we're going to give you all some insights today about how you can scale up your test automation efforts. Since we are here in our Nashville studio, I know, real life. Real life, yes. Since we're here in our Nashville studio, which is also home in Nashville for hot chicken, y'all. There is a rich legacy here dating back to the 1930s. So we thought, why not marry two of our favorite talking points, Provar, hot chicken, and have some fun. So please chew in for a spicy conversation. Expect some tears, expect some pragmatic solutions to bring back to your teams, and some hot chicken. You ready to do this?
Let's do it.
Let's get it on.
Okay. All right. So we are going to be moving during this conversation from medium all the way to really damn hot. Well, can I say that on here for hot chicken? Okay. Family affair. So let's start off first, Zac. Before we dive in, let's go ahead and get the mild one here going around. Yep. Dive in there. And so, Zac, you've helped so many leaders figure out how to, understand better their requirements for testing coverage and what their specific automation needs are to deliver quality back for their customers. I'm wondering from your perspective, what is a common misconception that leaders have around test automation?
Do I bite into this first and then answer? Okay.
Just take a moment to eat something, by the way, because I was like, I haven't eaten either.
It's good.
It's
good, really good.
It's really good.
So common misconceptions. I think one of the ones I see is people putting the cart before the horse. They want to jump right into test automation when they're from a manual background. Sometimes they don't even have the test cases written yet. Sometimes they just want to jump in and be like, I want to automate everything. And that's not feasible. You need to have the groundwork built and have a solid foundation before you expand on that automation. That's a pretty big one. Another one is people wanting to automate literally everything. If you have something in your software development lifecycle that takes you 5 minutes to regression test every 2 weeks, is it really worth it to automate that if it takes you 45 hours plus to automate it and it's very brittle? So there are things as good and bad candidates for automation, and trying to just cover all of your bases is not necessarily the best route to go.
Would you add anything to that as well?
Yeah, I would just echo what Zac is saying. I think that like he's saying, you can't automate everything under the sun. And I think too often people see success as the number of test cases or the amount of test cases that they execute in the test suite. But it can't always be judged by that, right? You have to account for risk. You have to account for all the different aspects of how people are actually using your application. And too often we see people running test cases that are actually not things that are ran in their orgs regularly, right? So you want to make sure you're actually getting real value out of your testing.
I see a lot of clients that will test standard components within Salesforce that Salesforce tests themselves. And so there's in some circumstances, if you have a custom component, yes, it makes sense, but there's no need for you to go back and regression test everything that Salesforce has already done. I think another common misconception too is the UI flow, especially coming from manual backgrounds. You do what's comfortable, right? So I've been testing in the UI. I've been walking through that process via the UI flow. I'm going to design my test in the same way. In a lot of cases, that's what you want to do. But in some circumstances, APIs are a really great way that a lot of people don't really even think about. So if you're trying to edit an opportunity and that's your test case, edit an opportunity, maybe created a lead associated, you're going to have that opportunity created first. Well, don't do that through the UI flow if it's not part of the main meat and potatoes of your test case. Do that through an API. And then, go from there. That's a great way to save time. And again, it's just getting people out of their comfort zones to do, more things. And that ties into change management and all too, but that's another topic. So.
Well, it's early. Would you add anything to that?
I think he hit the nail on the head. I'm happy with that.
Well, don't you feel like sometimes too, though, and this is just like from my experience, working with so many leaders using different products, and there's those vanity metrics. And there's a disconnect sometimes from those stakeholders that are investing in these projects to the end user that understands more so what actual coverage is needed and what that looks like. So I sometimes tell people, they're like, well, we'd like to get to 100% test automation coverage. And I was like, is that your goal?
Yeah.
Or is that your manager's
Good
goal?
luck.
Good luck.
Let me know how it works out for you.
Let me know. Because not everything needs to be. Okay, y'all. We are moving on to medium.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Let's keep it rolling.
Okay, let's keep it rolling. So I'm gonna go ahead. Yeah, get in there.
Right.
I feel like we're like having like a family meal, y'all.
Yeah.
Family style.
Family style, indeed.
True to self.
Oh man. Okay. Hot chicken. I could eat you all day. You don't like pickles.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You don't like pickles. I remember that. So I want to kind of turn over to you, Michael, a little bit more, right? So we're talking a lot around helping identify, you know, the challenges for requirements and coverage. But once customers get onboarded, I want to know from you a little bit more, like, what are some of the resources that Provar provides that helps people start making those quick wins so that they can bring some of those, you know, proof of ROI back to their teams, right? Like, what is it about our teams and you and your role?
That's good chicken. I would just say that, first of all, our customer success team is second to none. And when it comes to onboarding people and getting clients up to speed quickly, they're phenomenal at answering questions and get everyone set up very quickly, getting those, you know, quick wins, like you said. If they have any issues early on with some questions around their automation and how to how their customizations and how to handle those in Provar, they're very good at getting those questions answered quickly, so that way they can move forward and get a good test suite under their feet. And aside from that, in terms of Jumpstart consulting we offer, we can actually provide test cases that are built in your orgs and explain to you, here's the process, here's the best practice, right? So you have a template, you have kind of an actual, you know, template to follow whenever you're building out test cases. Here's what a Provar consultant, here's what we would build out if we were given your test case and we were asked to do it in Provar. And we give that to you and we can offer that, so that way you have a starting point. You're not just left to the races and say, okay, go and do your testing, right?
Yeah, and it's more than that too, right? Like, not only do we give them those test cases, we also explain to them how we did it and better enable them to use that template in the future too. It's not just, here we did our work, here you go. It's here's how we did it, here's why we did it, so you can better leverage that for your organization as well.
Right.
I think I will agree with Michael there. The second to none as far as customer service. Our reviews on G2 will absolutely corroborate that. We're also doing our launched our learning platform, University of Provar, a really great way to learn about the content, interactive videos. Very, very nice setup there too.
You've done some narration for that as well.
I have. I did a few at the start, and then we got a professional in. So yeah.
I will say also too, we're all about continuous learning here at Provar, and our University of Provar, we do have courses that are available to anyone to check out. So if you want to stay competitive in today's job market, learn about emerging tools and techniques, it's just another opportunity for you to continue to expand your knowledge. And that said as well, I wanted to also kind of dive in a little bit more into, when we're thinking about by the way, on a side note, I was like, I can handle hot chicken. This is like medium. And I'm like, dude.
This one, I can feel it a little bit more.
I'm feeling the creep. I'm feeling the creep.
You could feel the spice, but,
Yeah.
we're here.
Yeah.
No stopping.
Haven't started sweating yet. So.
So we're talking a lot about, Salesforce, when we have these new releases, they always have a disclaimer, right? Famous disclaimer, and they're saying DOM inspection tests are subject to change. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means for our audience, and also to how Provar helps rectify this?
So, I mean, for the folks that have started doing automation testing with Salesforce, when you run into dynamic IDs and Salesforce putting something in a wonky iframe, it just gets really frustrating to try to manage dynamically, especially with automation, because if you're not working closely with your developers to be able to have easily identifiable locators, you're going to struggle. And that's with Selenium, that's with, any sort of generic tool that's not built on the metadata. And that's really, again, where Provar comes in, is we're metadata driven. And everybody talks about Salesforce metadata, and like, yes, the metadata is important, but metadata is really just data about data. It's data in a sense. What we do with it and how we use that metadata to build our locators is really our bread and butter. And we have a very close relationship with Salesforce. We're closely aligned with their release roadmap. We work with them, at every stage to ensure that our tool is going to be ready and, unbreakable for the next Salesforce release. Additionally, again, the like I said, the metadata is really powerful. The intuition and ease of use is really nice as well. Being able to incrementally build out your test cases without getting stuck in the vicious author or creation, execute, view the report, debug, rebuild, re-execute, re-debug. You don't have to do that with Provar. You can build these test cases on the fly in real time and get real-time feedback. So as you're mapping fields and adding things to test cases, you watch the automation execute. So getting that real-time feedback is going to save you from getting in that feedback debug loop.
The rework spiral?
The rework spiral. Refactor and rework.
Yep.
No, I think that's on point. And I think just as a follow-up too, you talked a little bit about, working with development teams, talking about the rework spiral. I'm wondering, what are some of the unique challenges from your experience that you've seen Salesforce developers face, and how does Provar help address some of those concerns?
That's a great question. I think especially in the Salesforce ecosystem, we see the development team and the QA team operate too much in a silo, right? There's not enough communication between the two. And so you have the QA team who wants, like you said, they're driven by those metrics. How many test cases can we churn out? Yep. How much regression can we perform before each release and get our percentages up in terms of pass and fail? But then you have the development team on the other side who's just constantly churning out changes. So the regression is constantly in a state of flux.
Well, Salesforce is constantly turning out changes too, so it adds an additional level of complexity.
Salesforce themselves, trying to marry those two is definitely what we want to help with. And I think because of Provar's framework and the way that it works behind the scenes, it's easy for the developers to get it. I think a lot of times when I have conversations with people who come from a development background, they instantly are like, okay, yeah, that clicks, like that makes sense, because we're building on the metadata, so that way tests are going to be more future-proofed. You're not going to have to worry about breaking changes too often, so the developers know what changes they can make that are going to impact their QA, right? They don't want to make changes that are, necessarily going to affect the test as much. So just having that communication and having that feedback loop is very important.
And I think that there's like a value, right? Like there's a value in having like no one tool serves every single need. You're going to have multiple tools in your automation toolkit, right? I think that there is a value from talking with so many leaders. I've heard oftentimes, again, the value of being able to have tools that others in your business can use, right? And we know testing is now a boardroom topic, right? We know now that you want to make it's all the way at the top. So finding tools that can be scaled across the business, right? So whether you're a business analyst, whether you're a Salesforce administrator doing that tireless manual testing, God bless you, before pre-release, or you're a Salesforce developer, right, wanting different custom coded solutions, right? I think it's great sometimes when you have a tool that can offer that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, and not only that, but specific features to Provar that would help with that, like things like Provar DX. So when you're talking about Salesforce DX, that's Salesforce CLI that they use to deploy metadata changes and basically where the developer operates, right? So any developer in Salesforce will be familiar with it. So having a plugin for Salesforce DX that they can utilize to be like, oh, okay, I can spin up a Scratch org and run my Provar test cases that the QA built in those Scratch orgs. That's a huge benefit.
Massive. Yeah, and maybe we should talk a little bit about that too, just the amount of orgs and some clients have. Because if you have your one org and that's fine, even if you just have a single production org, you probably have a Scratch org at some point that you're spinning up. You probably have multiple sandbox orgs, staging orgs. How do you have a tool that handles all of those? And that's where Provar really comes in too, is that we're effectively org agnostic. It does not matter how many orgs we want to connect to. It doesn't matter if it's a development org or a Scratch org or a production org. We can connect to all of them, all from your local machine or from your CI/CD pipeline. You don't have to install Provar on each specific org that you want to test, which is just not scalable when you have when you're a massive client that has 50 plus Salesforce orgs. It's just not scalable. So that's another, I think, major benefit too that I really like.
And when you're talking about, like you mentioned, polymorphism, right? So tests that can be ran in different environments. That's exactly what gives that ability to do that. Like you can build out a test case in a sandbox development environment and then run it in a Scratch org with no changes. You can't do that in most other tools. There's just not that capability.
Yeah, I mean, and we could tie into test plans a little bit as well too. I mean, test plans offer so much versatility as far as executions, parameterizing different things. If you want to, instead of say you have one test case and you want to run it across multiple different browsers, where you're not going to have to create 5 different test cases for 5 different browsers, you just point it to a different parameter and execute it on that browser, and you're good to go. So that's as far as that maintenance and scalability, which is I think a lot of reasons that people come to Provar is, you can do everything, but can you do it at scale is the main question.
And that's the one thing we talk about, coming back to maintenance for a second, because you see this struggle down the road all the time. And I always tell leaders this, I'm like, they're like, whenever I hear in-house or anything, I'm like, when it comes to maintenance, I just tell them, I go, time is the one resource you will never get back.
Free is not always free.
And we're not getting younger. Okay, y'all, so this conversation is probably going to get even more spicy soon. We are halfway through the journey. We started off with the mild, the medium, and now we're making our way to hot. Okay? With hot is we're going to spice up this conversation a little bit more. We talked earlier a little bit about Salesforce and test automation architect. Sure, I'm wondering... we get this question a lot from leaders, Michael. I'm sorry, I'm keeping the hot chicken from you here. I'm actually prolonging this. I'm going to give you the pickles, too.
Yeah, I grabbed the one that was less dark, so I'm hoping it's not quite as spicy.
This is a
Big
setup.
brain.
I was going to touch my head, but I remember.
Setup, okay.
Okay.
So I want to know, though, God bless us. Here we are. I want to know, what is a piece of advice that you have for... creating, we talked a little bit before about creating scalable architecture, right? What is a piece of advice that you would give to anyone watching about creating, and just in general, like recommended practices about creating scalable architecture? I'm going to start with you because your mouth is more full.
Yeah, that's
it's getting there.
I mean,
I can feel it more than the other one.
it's got more of an afterburn, right?
Yeah.
You haven't. Oh.
No. It's not set up. I got it.
So in terms of scalable architecture, right? So we talked about kind of onboarding and setting our customers up for success early on. And I like to talk about DevOps because I'm the DevOps guy. So I feel like when you're talking about scaling and you're talking about involving everyone and all teams, you cannot not mention CI/CD and DevOps. For everyone, it's a requirement nowadays, right? It comes up very early on in the pre-sales
even from
conversations.
The top,
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things that people if they're going to adopt a tool, they want to know it's going to work for their tools that they already have. So integrations and working with the tools that they already have. And so I definitely think that setting people up for success early on and getting everybody integrated to what they're already using and making that seamless, right? So Provar, like we were talking about earlier, because of the test plan feature, because of all the abilities that we have to make our test dynamic, it's very easy to plug and play into so many different CI/CD solutions because we have that architecture that allows you to do so. So I think that that's a huge part of people's success early on is getting them set up in their DevOps tool of choice. I'm not going to mention any tools, but I think it's a huge part of it.
I would agree. I think having the ability to connect to, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but I believe we can interact with 20 to 30 plus different CI/CD solutions with Provar, so we can handle basically all of the major ones and probably some of the minor ones too.
Oh, absolutely.
And being able to have that versatility, because I get that question a lot of which DevOps tools do you integrate with, and it's always like, well, which one are you working with? But if you're asking me, the answer is most likely yes, but we'll just clarify. But yeah, and I mean, like I said, I think Mike was saying, I think DevOps is really the heart of it there, because and DevOps isn't just like a practice too, it's like a methodology. It's the mentality of designing things to make the SDLC more streamlined. And that requires every component of the organization to work to achieve that. Whereas, again, because like I'm a testing guy, like I do automation, so I have my little scripts and they run and they're great. But like, again, without a DevOps solution to plug that in, I'm really just running my tests locally on my machine. And how much is that helping people, right? Again, from my perspective, going to the test cases themselves, and as far as what you can design there, code coverage is obviously important. As I said, you don't need to test every single permutation of everything. You want to design test cases that handle the major benefits, the fringe cases, and a few in between. The really simple solution I have is an input box, right? If you're testing it, it takes a value between 0 and 100. You don't need to test every number 0 through 100. You test 0, you test 100, you test 1 in the middle, then maybe you test -1 and you call it a day. You could say that you had 100 different test cases for that one thing, but are they really doing what they should be doing? And I think another thing too is modularize everything. Like don't copy paste. Like
Callable tests.
Yeah, callable tests. You run into some code blocks where you see all these copy pasted code everywhere, and you're just like, why didn't you just make a method out of this and reference it? And that's kind of like what callable test cases do. You can basically completely containerize a test case and call it in another test case and pass in different parameters. You could even go one step farther with data-driven testing and call the same test case with different data every time to test different flows from like an Excel spreadsheet or a JSON file.
Yeah, and I think that just when you're thinking of scaling just in general, you have to think about it early on in the process.
Yeah.
If you don't plan for that, then it's going to hit you like a bus, right? You have to very early on, like you're saying, like build out those callables. We have a lot of clients that's what they use, callable test cases.
Catching you a little bit there?
It's happening, y'all.
I got a little back of the throat action there.
Did you
I've
want
been
some
sipping
milk?
the milk.
No, you know.
We have a jug.
We have one
2%.
more, and my plan is to not go for the milk. So
Michael's over here just
I'm not planning for scale here. I'm not thinking scaling out my chicken here.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I think it's... anyways, just going back to that conversation, I think callable test cases, building out the building blocks of your testing, right? Like you have a really long flow. It has 10 different, what we would call test cases in one larger test case. Each of those can be broken off into its own callable test case. You can make it dynamic. You can parameterize it with data-driven testing using external data sources like Excel, databases, and things like that. And that allows you to use those same building blocks in other areas.
Yeah, or even run them independently. It could be a chance that you have a test case that's a massive test case. You only need to test that one component because that one component failed. Why run a test case that takes you 20 minutes when you could just run the callable test case that tests exactly that?
Get to the point of failure earlier on helps with the debugging and the maintenance, and that's a huge thing for people when they see that they can do that. So you have like step 5 is failing. Okay, I don't want to run steps 1 through 4 just to get to the step that's failing. I want to be able to run that in isolation, give it the data it needs to run successfully or not, depending on if it's passing. But
Sounds like a past relationship of mine.
No comments.
No comments. Yeah, well, and with that said, I just want to say before we dive on here, I know that we're enjoying some milk. For you viewers that are not watching, Michael over here, we're not judging, but we're thinking about scalable architecture, sustainable eating. Yeah, I'm seeing ranch. That's all. So while we're having milk, he's also having a dairy product, y'all. No judgment. Judgment-free zone.
strategy, people.
We
Strategy.
understand. Yeah.
The plan is to finish. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Slow and steady wins the race.
That's right.
And I want to point out what you all are not seeing here is that Michael does not like pickles, but has also eaten every single piece. Yeah, just wanted to point that out. So we're all impressed over here. With that said, though, let's see how we survive with so damn hot. Okay.
There's a lot of seasoning on that.
And there is. And you had a strategy last time where you took the lightest piece of meat.
I did.
You did. So how about the darkest
okay.
colored one this time?
Okay,
I like it.
But I'll give you some pickles. Don't say I never gave you nothing.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
A pickle.
Okay, just one was for me. I'm going to take...
I'll take the bottom one. Let's do it.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay. Brave soul. Brave soul. So we talked a little bit already about callable tests. I'm wondering though for you all, as we prepare to cry on camera.
That's a lot of seasoning.
Yeah. We're thinking a little bit about seasoning, and I would try and make a good segue there. But thinking about what kind of the different components that make up Provar, right? I want to know, what do you think are some of the most underrated? What do you think is the most underrated feature of Provar and why?
Ooh, all right. I'm gonna take a bite of this first.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's gonna be fun when you can already put it in your mouth, and as soon as it touches your tongue, you're like, oh, this is gonna be spicy.
You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say, as far as overrated features or underrated features, this chicken is underrated spicy.
Well, we will not name the name of the institution that it was made at. But they're spicy. Okay, there's some good hot chicken places out here. What's up? Or maybe you two have lived here for such a long period of time.
Builds up a resistance to it.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, this one's getting me. Ooh.
There's more of an afterburn here.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah, I would say, so underrated features. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily underrated, but our org browser is one of those things that's always kind of just amazed me. The fact that we could not only pull down and cache the Salesforce metadata, but interact with it directly from the tool. I mean, even things as like writing a SQL query to grab a specific record, or if we wanted to, create an API call and interact with the Salesforce API. I mean, you literally drag and drop the object you want to interact with from the org browser in your test case, and boom, you've created an API call. So just being able to cache that and interact with that and expound on it as well, I think is one of those things that I, like when I came to Provar and from a different Selenium background, that was one of the things that I was like, wow, this is really powerful. And it's one of those things that we talk about a lot, but it's, again, for me, like that's one of the things that I really took away from this, is just being able to interact with it and see all that data right there, see all of the fields and the structure and specific records if I want to, without even having to log into my org. I really, really appreciated that.
Don't touch your face, Zach.
All right. I mean, you can literally see, like, it's just like the mounds of it. Like, look at the difference between the underside and the top. Like,
I know.
My question is, why is it black? Right?
just
It's
a little.
not scientists.
I was gonna say it's a little char, but it's fried chicken, so that's not how that works.
I have a question. If you all know why the hot chicken was like this on one side, but not on the other, let us know in the comments. Or maybe we'll figure it out by then. Are you serious? Okay, I'm stealing one of your 20,000 wipes.
Yeah,
no ranch on that one for the viewers at home.
We need to up. Michael needs to have his own segment of like the additional, like the bonus round challenge.
The off the menu.
Get you some Carolina Reapers or something.
Oh, that's next time. That's next time.
See, I'm a South Carolina boy, so I had to say the Reapers, but
we're gonna get you next time.
I can't decide. So I'll name two. Underrated, or I think the features that they may not be underrated.
Sure.
But they're definitely not used as often as they should be properly. Auto cleanup is one of my favorite things. In addition to Zach, I also came from a Selenium background.
Yep.
And so having to do data cleanup and test teardown and all of that, that was a whole test case and process in itself. Right? So not having to worry about that is a huge thing. And having that auto cleanup feature for all the records that you create throughout a test case, it keeps a log of all those record IDs, and then it will remove them at the end of the test case automatically.
And that's another, I mean, just having that object ID or record ID log is insanely important too, because of just of how important Salesforce identifiers are for navigation and reference within the tool. Like when we create an object, whether it's via the API or the UI, we automatically store that record ID in our log file so that we can navigate there easier. We can also like directly navigate to that. So, if your test case calls for you loading on a particular opportunity, you don't have to go to the opportunities list and click the button. You can just have the test case load there because you know the ID and how to navigate to it. But yeah, I liked that a lot as well on the object ID log file. And then I guess connections aren't necessarily an underrated tool, but I mean, our connections are really powerful too, the way that we can just change orgs however we like or however we need.
Yeah. Related to connections, that was going to be my number two, was the ability to override connections.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm getting a little bit of an afterburn. It feels like a lighter has been taken to my lips, like right next to it, and there's just that slow, steady burn of my lips. And
somehow it's not on my lips; it's just all on the inside of my mouth.
I
feel like that's a good thing.
I tried to avoid the lip contact, but somehow it made it.
Talk about scalable. Talk about strategy. This one over here.
I got a little overconfident.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for the lip action.
Just drink some ranch.
Your eyes are a little more watery than they were, but.
All right. Okay.
So overriding connections.
Overriding connections.
Yeah. I think that's a good one too. The ability to just, and that's how you can like daisy chain different callable test cases together too, rather than have a different browser window pop up each time. You can relog into that one, or you can even change it to a completely different org too.
And you're talking about overhead, right? So going back to scalability, when you have like hundreds of test cases that are going to be executed, the amount of time it takes to open up a browser, log in, wait for the page to load, and then perform whatever your first action is of the test case, that could be like a minute or more in some cases. And so having the ability to override those connections and not have to do that between each test case is a huge benefit, right? It cuts down on the...
It's getting down.
It is. It is.
Yeah. You know, the ranch helped a little.
We got some Tums, man. It'll be fine.
We have milk. We've got antacid over here.
Oh, I got plenty of Tums.
Oh, don't be a hero. Don't go in on by yourself here, Michael.
Oh,
You
no,
sure?
no.
Michael's like, what are you talking about? I've already eaten everything. You guys are the ones that need to catch up.
It's just now I just have, it's just sitting, right?
Yeah.
I've done it and now it's just like, okay, here, you know, it's just sitting and I have no way.
So you're the kind of kid that just jumps headlong into the pool, huh? You don't dip a toe in, you just...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Freezing cold water. Let's not find out. Let's just go.
Yeah. Are you a toe dipper? Interesting.
We did a polar bear challenge, or polar bear plunge in Charleston when I was in school there, and it was 18 degrees in Charleston when we did it. That was probably the coldest I've ever been. I've never jumped into water and had my lungs freeze up to where it was hard to breathe. But
I'm also just watching him with the messy fingers, y'all. I know where the wipes are, but I'm enjoying this too much.
That's why I had my little glossary of wipes over here.
I used mine up. I don't understand how y'all didn't have such messy fingers. Am I eating them differently?
I had 4 wipes.
Just wait for the camera.
Jazz hands.
Jazz hands, exactly. Well, we want to thank you so much, Zac, so much, Michael, for being here. There's been a lot to chew on.
To digest.
I know, and unpack. So I just want to say thank you so much. Y'all, if you come to Nashville, hot chicken is a must. Don't go and eat with Michael, though, is the spoiler alert from this conversation. And if you want to learn more about Provar, y'all, we are all about giving back to our community. Tons of great resources mentioned earlier with University of Provar. And also, too, just like you can just book some time to connect with awesome testing experts like Zac. We're out there in the community, y'all. And our number one goal here is to continue to have these types of conversations because we're here to support y'all and sometimes eat hot chicken. So with that said, this has been spicy, insightful, and less tears than I imagined, actually.
You know, my ducts stayed dry. The sinuses got going, though.
You can see him tilting his head back so the tears don't come out. He's like, stay in, tears, stay in.
Well, I think they like drag queens. They say like tap the side of your eyes, you know, so you don't cry. But spicy, yeah. So with that said, we appreciate you all. We're gonna get Zac some wipes.
I need some. I'm like a child here. Yeah.
We're gonna get me some more milk, and we're gonna get you some spicier chicken.
Some more chicken. Let's eat
some.
some.
Okay, all
Let's
right.
do it. Number 5.
Thank you all.